Hello, my friends. Have you ever been stuck in a life-sucking meeting, a meeting that seems to go on without any point? Well, my name is Fred Fowler. I'm a very senior Scrum Master expert. I'm a Professional Scrum Master Level 3, certified by Scrum.org, and I've got more than 20 years of experience working with the Scrum framework in companies that are large and small. And some of my worst experiences involved companies where it seems like everybody is in meetings all the time. There was one client in particular that I worked for a brief period of time. They were a big retail chain, and you would recognize the name if I told you. You'd know it immediately who I was talking about, so I'm not going to mention it. But they were undertaking a big project to get rid of all their old legacy software systems that have been around for many, many years and replace them all with modern, up-to-date versions of that same functionality. In effect, they're trying to get rid of the old big iron COBOL-based systems and move to a more modern technical platform. And part of the reason was they had a really bad scare. One time in 2015, their old legacy systems that have been built up over many, many years, all of a sudden they stopped. They stopped working. And no one could figure out why. And all the people who had originally built the system, the core system, many, many years ago had all retired. So the system had stopped, they didn't know what to do, and they had 10,000 retail locations that were all of a sudden completely out of business. Now, if a retail chain all of a sudden can't do its business, for one day that's a heck of a lot of money. For 2 days, it's panic time. For 3 days, it's close to a disaster. Because there have been some studies in the wake of some natural disasters like earthquakes that show if businesses can't get back up and running within 7 days, they never recover. So basically this company saw the handwriting on the wall. They realized their 10,000 store chain was about to go bankrupt, and it scared the bejesus out of them. So anyway, the board of directors decided to okay a project to de-risk the business, take the risk out of the business. And what that meant was getting rid of all the old systems that nobody knew how they worked anymore and replacing them with new modern technology. And they allocated $500 million to do it, $500 million. And they hired an army of developers, programmers of all kinds from lots of different computer services firms, all converging on the problem of replacing everything and getting it going. Now, I got involved about 2 years after the beginning of this project. And the reason I got involved was that the project was not working at all. They'd spent hundreds of millions of dollars. They had an army of developers working away, but after 2 years, they really had nothing to show for it. Nothing had been completed, nothing had been delivered. Lots and lots of activity had happened, but very little results had come about. And so I was asked to go in there and figure out what was going on and try to get it to be, get things back on track so that something would actually come of all that money that's been spent. And when I got there, I found, first of all, that everybody that I needed to talk to was in meetings all the time. I needed to meet with the director over a certain group that was working on a certain part of this project. And I introduced myself. He says, "Oh, nice to meet you, Fred. We're looking forward to having you on board. Thanks for coming to help us. And let's see, you want to talk to me? Okay, well, the first opening I have is 10 days from now, and it's a 30-minute opening. So can I pencil you in for 30 minutes in the afternoon 10 days from now?" And that kind of took me aback, because if things were going off track, how come it was impossible to get even a meeting with this director to talk about what was going on. And the more I probed, the more I looked into the situation, the more I realized that everybody was in meetings. There was a team of product owners led by a master product owner. They were in meetings all the time. There were a team of Scrum Masters, all led by a master Scrum Master. They were in meetings all the time. And the master Scrum Master, I talked with him a little bit, and he said, yes, we need your help. But don't talk to the Scrum Masters who work for me. Talk with me, because I don't want to interrupt my Scrum Masters in what they're doing. They don't have time. So if you want to communicate with them, communicate through me. And let's see, let me pencil you in for a meeting 5 days from now for 15 minutes. And then I went to the master product owner, and a very similar story. Please don't talk to the individual product owners who work for me directly. Just let me communicate with them. You communicate with me, because they're too busy. And again, I'd be happy to talk with you, but my schedule is very full. So contact me tomorrow, and I'll see what I can do about opening up something within the next 2 weeks. So anyway, everybody was busy in meetings all the time. And what was really strange was that, well, first of all, this was a situation where they were trying to use the SAFE framework, Structured Agile framework, which has 3 layers. There's the top layer, which is the so-called stakeholder layer. That's where stakeholders create initiatives. Then there's the bottom layer, which is where the Scrum teams are. They're supposed to implement things. And then there's a middle layer, which they call the release train layer. And that's where the stakeholders' initiatives are translated into actual directives for the Scrum teams to follow. And anyway, the stakeholders, I could talk to them. They were very anxious to talk to me. And they had plenty of time. And I said, so what is it you need? And they said, well, we're very focused on de-risking the business, which means what we need to do is focus on what the riskiest parts of the business are. So we want to work on this part of it, and this is what we needed to do, and we work on that part of it. That's what they do. So they had a very clear idea of what the goal was, what they needed. And then at the Scrum team level, it was a very bizarre situation, because the Scrum teams that I talked to all said, well, we don't have enough work to do. Huh? What do you mean? Well, the product owners, the release train level people are supposed to take the needs expressed by the stakeholders and turn them into product backlog items. The trouble is, they don't do that. We always run out of refined product backlog items halfway through the sprint. So toward the end of the sprint, we just sit around doing nothing, because there's nothing to do. We don't have any product backlog items that are clear and we can work on. So, wow, okay. Now what's happening in that middle layer? Well, the middle layer was full of people who were in those meetings all the time. Design review meetings, strategy meetings, meetings about process, meetings about, you name it, status meetings, coordination meetings. And it became very clear that what was going on was that nothing much was getting done, because everybody was in meetings all the time. Now, why were they in meetings all the time? Well, it's because they were trying to figure out what the heck was going on. They were trying to figure out how to get organized. So if you have a situation where everybody's in meetings all the time, that tells you 2 things. First of all, it isn't clear what's actually happening. And number 2, people feel things are disorganized and they're struggling to get a handle on what to do. So lots and lots of meetings are a sign of disorganization. And that was really the situation in this case. By the way, they came up with a term I'd never heard before. They called it throwaway work. What that meant was that the product backlog items were identified and given to the Scrum teams, but then later the release train people changed their minds and says, well, we don't need that after all. So the Scrum teams implemented these things, but they turned out to be unnecessary in the end. They were throwaway work. I'd never heard that term before. So anyway, the point is that this situation shows that things were very, very disorganized. And whenever there was a problem, there was an urge to do something about it. And the easiest thing to do about a problem is to have a meeting about it. So people were substituting activity for results. They were substituting having a meeting to discuss a situation from actually trying to address or understand what the problem was. Now, this disorganization has been going on for a long time. And again, this company had been working with various computer service firms. The people's like, back then it was Arthur Andersen, they call it something else now, and Tata and lots of companies like that. And unfortunately, those companies were not really interested in getting the job done. They're interested in getting billable work hours for their people. So they gave advice to the company that says, oh, things are not going well. Oh, you need more developers. You're falling behind. Okay, let's give you more. You need 50 more. I need 75 more. We'll get them for you. No problem. And there's an old joke which says that if you have a project that's late, if you add people to it, it makes it even more late. Now, why is that the case? And by the way, that's absolutely true. You see, the implicit assumption behind putting more people on the task is that somehow if you have more fingers typing on more keyboards, that will get things done faster. But usually the problem isn't a lack of fingers on keyboards. The problem is figuring out how to coordinate it all so that it works together and you don't end up working at cross purposes. So adding more people to a late project will make it later because the fundamental problem is usually that things are disorganized. And if you add more people to a situation where there is disorganization, it'll make it even more disorganized. So how do you deal with this situation? Well, first of all, you need to understand some of the lessons that the Scrum framework teaches. First of all, set specific goals for specific time periods. And don't have the goals set by some middle layer of management. Have the goals negotiated between the people who understand what is needed and the people who understand how to create something that will fill the needs that are identified. In other words, who understands what's needed? Well, the stakeholder level understands what's needed in this situation. They were very clear about it. Wow, I don't know what that was. So anyway, the stakeholder situation, the stakeholder level was very clear as to what was needed. They had no misunderstanding about that. And the developers level, the lowest level, they knew the technology. They knew how to get things done. The trouble was that in-between layer, the people who were trying to translate the needs of the stakeholders and turn them into directions for the Scrum teams to follow. The Scrum framework says that the right people to figure out how to create a solution are the ones who are going to do it, the developers. And what they need to do is they need to negotiate directly with the people who understand what's needed, the top layer. So Scrum is all based on that idea, and there's a specific event for that to happen. It's called the sprint planning meeting. And the sprint planning meeting is where the people who understand what is needed, in other words, the product owner, negotiates with the developers who have the ability to create stuff to fill that need. And by discussing what's desirable on the part of the stakeholders and what's possible on the part of the developers, when you negotiate and come to an agreement, you've come up with whatever is practical. And again, you do that, you set a goal of approximately 2 weeks, and then you don't have any meetings except for one. You have a meeting once per day, a very brief 15-minute meeting that limits the amount of time that people are going to be in meetings to just a short amount of time. And that 15 minutes is there just to make sure that the developers understand how they're doing. Are they on track to meeting the agreement that they made? Are they able to take care of business? And will they be able to deliver what they said they were going to deliver by the end of the sprint? And that's all the meetings that are necessary. You don't need people talking about how meetings are needed to get meetings under control. There's an old joke that says, we will keep on meeting until we figure out why nothing's getting done. You see, Scrum cuts meetings down to a very bare minimum so that the people who are working on the product can concentrate on that and get their tasks done without having to sit around in life-sucking meetings all the time. So it's too late to say make a long story short, because it is a long story and it's not very short. But the important thing is that if you're seeing a situation where there's meetings upon meetings upon meetings, it's just a sure sign that things are very disorganized. And there's no amount of meeting that will get things to be more organized. The right way to organize things is to let the people who are going to do the development work negotiate directly with the people who understand what the needs are that need to be filled, and let them figure out the rest. So anyway, that's the end of that story. Again, my name is Fred Fowler. I'm a third-level Professional Scrum Master certified by Scrum.org. I've been working with Scrum for almost 20 years now. And I've been teaching lots of people how to be Scrum Masters. I've taught more than 300 people how to be Scrum Masters. And anyway, thanks for joining me on this exploration of Scrum in the real world. Look forward to seeing you. By the way, if you like the video, please give it a like. Thumbs up. If you want to subscribe, that'd be great. That way you get notifications about future videos. Go ahead and click the little bell icon, which will tell you when I upload something new. And I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. So once again, thanks for joining me in Scrum in the Real World. Best regards.